Chair, we are live.
Thank you. I will now call to order the April 23rd, 2025 meeting of the Nevada Local Justice Reinvestment Coordinating Council. Good afternoon. It's good to see you, and welcome to those who are viewing the meeting on the Department of Sentencing's Policy YouTube channel. This is the sixth meeting of our 2023 to 2025 meeting cycle. I will now ask Director Powers to take the roll.
Thank you, Chair. Michael Chop, Bill Ferguson, Dylan Frainer, Mackenzie Hilton,
Present.
Clinton Hohenstein, Brenda Ingram, Eric Kern, Chelsea Maza, William McCurdy, Julia Murray, James Phoenix,
Here.
Garrett Pruitt,
Present.
Dorothy Rowley, I see Councilperson Rowley on the screen.
I'm here. I'm present.
Okay, thank you. Stephen Rye, Brian Shields, Bryce Shields, I apologize. Clinton Zenz,
Present.
Denny Bird.
Present.
Okay, we do not have a quorum, Chair. We did have 3 more RSVPs, yes. So if they show up, then we can do voting items.
Okay, thank you. Now, Jenna's going to move to public comment for us. So I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Chair.
I guess I need to read more.
Oh, you're okay. I was going to read it for you, but if you want to read it, you go ahead.
Sorry, I was distracted by my note. I will now open agenda item 2, the first period of public comment. There are 2 periods of public comment, one at the beginning of the meeting and one at the end. Members of the public have 2 options for submitting public comment. First, members of the public may do so in writing by emailing the Department of Sentencing Policy at sentencingpolicy@ndsp.nv.gov. Public comment received in writing will be provided to the council and be included by reference in the minutes of the meeting. Members of the public who wish to testify may do so by telephone. Due to time constraints, public comment will be limited to 2 minutes. Any member of the public that exceeds the 2-minute limit may submit your comments in writing to the Department of Sentencing Policy. Callers, as a reminder, please mute the device on which you are watching the meeting. All sound will come through your telephone. At this time, I will ask staff to manage and direct those who wish to testify by telephone. I will turn it over to Jenna.
Chair, at this time, we have no one who would wish to participate in public comment.
Okay, thank you. I will close the first period of public comment. Moving on to agenda item 3 would be our notes, but we are not able to vote on these. Correct, Georgia? Do I open it up for any discussion though, or do we just wait and table them?
You can ask if anybody has any changes or comments at this point regarding the minutes, but then we'll just move on and we will ask again next meeting.
Okay, is there any comments or questions about the notes as presented so far? Okay, we will table the voting until next meeting when we have a quorum. I will now open agenda item 4. This will be the grant presentation. In the 2023 legislative session, $3 million was appropriated to help the council fulfill its statutory mission. NDSP has been instrumental in dispersing and monitoring these grant funds. The grant cycle is quickly coming to an end, and today we will hear the latest on this topic. Marie Bledsoe will now present for us.
Thank you, Chair. Give me just 1 second. Let me share my screen. And hopefully everybody can see the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So good afternoon. I am Marie Bledsoe, a management analyst with the Nevada Department of Sentencing Policy. And this presentation is an update on the Nevada Local Justice Reinvestment $3 million grant program. There's a lot to catch up on with the NLJR grant. The report NDSP was required to write for the Interim Finance Committee was submitted. Results from 6 months worth of programmatic reporting, deobligated funds, and a new round 7 of grant funding. The required Interim Finance Committee or IFC report was mandated in AB 388 from the 2023 legislative session. The legislation also created the $3 million Nevada Local Justice Reinvestment Grant and gave the Coordinating Council and NDSP the authority to distribute these grant funds. That report was due December 20th, 2024, and it can be found on the NDSP's website at sentencing.nv.gov. Once you are on the website, select the web page called The Hub, and then scroll down to Reports. Here are some highlights from the report. 20 applications were received over 6 rounds of funding. Those rounds of funding ran from March 18th through June 21st of 2024. 4 peer review committees reviewed and scored 18 grant applications, and 11 applications were awarded grant funds. The full $3 million was granted, plus 5 recipients were governmental entities who were required to include a 30% match. This resulted in an additional $288,606 in documented benefit to these communities for a total of $3.288 million for our target population, which is people in reentry and recidivism prevention. Considering Nevada as a whole, 8 rural communities received a shared total of $632,827 in funding. Washoe County got $782,000 in funding, and Clark received $1.5 million. In a broad view, here are 3 highlights from the report. $1.4 million in granted funds are providing direct services to our target population, like job training, childcare, housing, transportation assistance, plus other reentry services. $1 million in grant funding was for either direct employees at the grant recipient organizations or for contracted community health workers, therapists, counselors, case managers, and peer recovery support specialists. $600,000 was allocated for other supportive services like fiscal and clerical staff, essential documents for our target population, needed supplies for completing mental health assessments or conducting drug screenings, and additional training for staff at the grant recipient organizations. I encourage all members of the council to look at the report. The full report is 33 pages long, but I wanted to point out that only the first 11 pages is what was required to be reported. The final 22 pages are essentially an appendix with 2 pages dedicated to each of the 11 grant recipients. A final NLJR grant report is due to the IFC on September 19th, 2025. We plan to follow this same format in the final report and welcome comments, suggestions, or ideas on anything else you would like to see included. Again, this report can be found on the Nevada Department of Sentencing Policy's website. Moving on to programmatic results from the first 6 months of the grant. Each grant award had a staggered start, with the first 2 grants starting June 1st of 2024. There have been a couple challenges to programmatic reporting. One challenge is the newness of this grant effort. The other is that each grant recipient was afforded the opportunity to set their own project goals. In this analysis, NDSP looked at places where the individual program lined up, the individual program results lined up. You may recall from our last presentation that the NDSP staff found 3 main project buckets for the grant awards from rounds 1 through 6. Those buckets are most and fast teams. In this bucket, we have 4 grant projects, mental health courts and substance use treatment with 3 projects in this bucket, and training and employment has 3 projects in that bucket. Please note that adding up the numbers of projects here comes to 10 and not 11. The reason for this is we have 1 grant for victim services, which was a requirement for these grant funds. So this is 1 grant in its own 4th bucket. The results presented here include the performance period from June 1st through December 31st, 2024. The 2 reporting periods ended October 31st and June 31st. The 3rd quarterly reports for the January through March performance period are due April 30th next week. So these results will be included in a future meeting. So let's dive in. Bucket 1, MOST is an acronym for the Mobile Outreach Safety Team. These teams do crisis intervention in the field and are typically run out of the law enforcement agency. FAST or Forensic Assessment Services triage teams have 2 models. Model 1 can be run through a county's Human Services Department, or in Model 2, these services are run through a nonprofit. Douglas County, Partnership Douglas County is a nonprofit that maintains the funding for both the MOST and FAST teams in Douglas County. The MOST mental health professional is paid by Partnership Douglas County. She wears a bulletproof vest and is partnered with a uniformed Douglas County deputy. The FAST personnel and program runs out of the nonprofit through a partnership with the Douglas County Jail. Lyon County has been trying to create a new effort using peer recovery support specialists on their FAST teams. And Community Chest, which is a single nonprofit operating in 2 counties, Story County and Mineral County, is pioneering a new way to run their MOST and FAST programs by using community health workers who are specially trained to provide crisis intervention. They can be called in by the Sheriff's Department at a moment's notice. As you will see, they also provide case management to create stability for the person in crisis. The Suicide Prevention Network is only operating in Douglas County, but provides deep emotional work in the jails to anyone who wants to attend. So far, they have been providing 1 session per month for men and women in Douglas County Jail. 16 men have attended the 5 male sessions, and 21 women have attended the 5 female sessions. These sessions have been so successful, Partnership Douglas County is expanding this program through the end of the grant to 1 session per week. In addition, the person leading these sessions asked if there was any way the jail would allow participants to have access to Kleenex. The next set of statistics spans all 4 grants. The MOST staff have completed 13 initial calls with 70 follow-up calls. Please note that the heavy burden for this team is not the initial crisis call, but the follow-up work. The FAST team in Douglas County expanded to start working with 12 low-risk offenders, which is really quite remarkable because they were hoping to do 10 offenders over the course of the year and have done 12 now in 6 months. I do want to mention that NDSP's Executive Director, Georgia Powers, and our Deputy Director, Jenna Bonacorsi, and I have started conducting monitoring visits with the grant recipients, which will be a focus of a future meeting. One interesting nugget we learned in Story County is that while Community Chest staff tries to work in the jail in a FAST-like way, most offenders do not want to work with them because they do not live in Story County. This makes sense when considering that folks may be running into trouble while visiting Virginia City on the south side of Story County, or while working at the business park off USA Parkway on the north side of Story County. This creates an interesting data point we may want to explore for several counties in Nevada. This scenario may also be true for Clark and Pershing counties. Programmatic results for bucket number 2 includes 2 mental health courts and a substance use disorder treatment facility. Here, our grantees are Las Vegas Municipal Court and Carson City's Justice Municipal Court, and Ridge House, a substance use disorder facility in Washoe County. It's important to note these programs can only take in a limited number of people, and once participants are accepted, the program takes 18 to 36 months to complete. These timeframes exceed the performance of these grant funds, and so limited data from these programs is available. But here is what we know. These programs have received 26 applications, with 24 of those applications being submitted to Ridge House. And the Las Vegas Municipal Court had 2 people with mental health court from the mental health court pending for admittance into the program, and that was in December. There have been 11 enrollees, with 6 unique individuals successfully completing the program, and a second set of 6 unique individuals being terminated from the program for non-compliance. It is striking that the successes and terminations were the same number, but I promise you that was purely a coincidence. One other point I need to make is that Ridge House has been completely revamping their entire program. And for the performance period ending December 2024, they had only accepted applications, but had not yet accepted people in reentry into their new program. So that is going to start in February of 2025. The first people are going to be coming into the program, so we'll have more reporting on that in the future. Bucket 3 is the training and employment pool of 3 grant recipients. They are Humboldt County Human Services, the City of North Las Vegas's Youth Court, and the Foundation for an Independent Tomorrow, or FIT. These grant recipients were collectively focusing on assistance services like housing, bus passes, and gas passes. Job training including a participant's chosen profession like welding, truck driving, or warehouse jobs, while also including job and life preparedness training like employment readiness, digital literacy, and financial literacy training. There is also data for the services being provided like legal assistance, help enrolling in Medicare, and providing hygiene kits so participants are prepared for schooling or job interviews. The City of North Las Vegas's Youth Court has been taking a more empirical approach to their new program, which is primarily funded with the NLJR grant funds. Here, City of North Las Vegas identified and ranked the key interventions provided to participants, with the top interventions in descending order being interpartnership violence crisis interventions, emotional support, substance use resource, mental health resources, then housing, and then vocational training. Our final bucket number 4 is our Single Victim Services Grant, and these funds went to the Nevada Outreach and Training Organization, or NOTO, located in Nye County. These folks have been very busy. Over the reporting period of June 1st through December 31st, 2024, NOTO assisted 278 primary domestic violence victims. 38 of these victims were children. 1 adult and 7 children had to be driven to Las Vegas for a SANE exam. They also had 79 secondary victims. NOTO's advocates provided over 3,000 direct services to these victims, including assessments, intake, and direct advocacy, like accompanying victims to court, securing temporary protective orders, and providing 18 victims with over 600 shelter bed nights. 38 victims attended support groups held at NODO's facility in Peru. So now we're going to be shifting gears to discuss deobligated funds. It is important to know that deobligation is a normal part of grant management. However, the process can be unnerving as grant funds begin to sunset, which is what is happening here. This chart may look familiar from past presentations. On the left, there is a column showing the major grant spending categories, like personnel, contracts, travel, etc. Next, there is a column for awards granted in rounds 1 through 6, with the corresponding funds allocated for each spending category. In this chart has a column showing PCRs or project change requests. This is where grantees request to shift money between categories to keep funds in line with where their projects are going. With new or expanding projects, the ability to move funds around can be critical. Here you can see that most of the funds moved from the personnel and supplies operating categories to contracts and consultants and the travel categories. Now, in December of 2024, grantees were given specific instructions that their quarterly financial reports, which were due to NDSP by the end of January, needed to include a good faith assessment of whether grant funds would be fully spent in the remaining 6 months, or would funds be deobligated. Holding grantees accountable took some cajoling and one emergency in-person meeting with the grant recipient. By mid-February, NDSP was aware that at least $500,000 was going to be returned unspent. And by the 14th of March, that number had risen to almost $800,000. This chart is current as of last week, and the total now sits at $894,347, or almost 1/3 of the $3 million was in jeopardy. And NDSP started strategizing on next steps. So hang with me here, because as luck would have it, at the same time this bad news was coming in, the Nevada Office of Financial Assistance hosted the Silver State Grant Conference in Reno, which I was able to attend. The last day of the conference was Friday, February 14th, or Valentine's Day. And in the final breakout session, which was on substance use disorders and collaboration, the presenter said, in the spirit of Valentine's Day and collaboration, she wanted to have the group do some speed dating. She handed the mic to each attendee, and we were instructed to ask for one thing our program needed the most. The goal was to try to hook up each need with resources available in the room. When handed the mic, I stated that we had funds that needed to be spent by the end of June. In what can only be described as a miracle, NDSP ended up with 7 contacts who were interested in this funding. NDSP created a 7th round of funding that included a 2-week application period and a peer review committee. 6 contacts expressed extreme interest in applying, and 5 applications were received. The peer review committee decided on the following grant awards. NLJR grant number 12 is the Northern Nevada Legal Aid, located in Washoe County. This nonprofit was awarded $38,119 and is a 2nd victim services grant. The goal of this project is to provide legal aid to victims of crimes. This assistance includes attorneys and staff helping victims navigate the justice system. NLJR grant number 13 is Quest Counseling and Consulting. This nonprofit was awarded $76,895, and their program is behavioral health services for justice-involved individuals in Washoe County. With these funds, Quest will primarily focus on individuals in drug court while providing therapeutic interventions, including enhanced drug testing, and they will be increasing access to stable housing. NLJR grant number 14 is $225,450 granted to Eddie House for their project titled Reentry for Youth Experiencing Homelessness in Washoe County. This project is designed to address the underlying factors that contribute to incarceration and recidivism among youth ages 18 to 24. By providing emergency shelter, traumatic-informed care, and intensive case management, Eddie House equips young adults with the tools necessary to break cycles of poverty, victimization, and criminal justice involvement. NLJR grant number 15 is $416,171 to the Catholic Charities of Northern Nevada located in Washoe County. This project is titled Recidivism and Relapse Prevention, Peer Support Recovery, Residential Services, and Employment. Catholic Charities goals include comprehensive support services and building supportive community networks and removing barriers to reentry and long-term recovery. And finally, NLJR grant number 16 is for $30,562 in Lincoln Community Coalition of Nevada in Lincoln County. They are located in Panaca. This project will expand what LCC offers to include therapy sessions with newly released clients and transportation for clients going to Las Vegas or St. George, Nevada for in-house mental health care or in-house recovery programs. LCC will also provide transportation to court-mandated appointments, drug screenings, and peer recovery groups. They are adding a web-based life skills training for incarcerated individuals and providing reentry backpacks containing essential items when individuals are released from jail. Altogether, these 5 grants aggregate to $787,197. I did want to mention that the peer review committee for round 7 was very thoughtful in their deliberations and did not just rubber stamp the grant applications received. Please note that 3 of the 5 grant awards were reduced from what was originally requested. In fact, these grants were reduced from $842,000 in requested funds to $787,000 in awarded funds. This is a drop of almost $55,000. To conclude the round 7 reporting portion of this presentation, as of last week, again, the available funds being deobligated was at $894,000, and the round 7 awards came to $787,000. Alas, at this point, we already know at least $107,000 will be returned to the state when the grant closes after June 30th. Looking to the future, the reporting at future meetings will be monitoring visits and the results. We want to let you guys know about the discoveries there. Continuing to analyze programmatic reporting and considerations for future funding. And with that, Chair, that ends this presentation.
I have a question and then I'll open it up for other questions. With that 107,000 that we know is deobligated and not appointed to anybody at this point, would any of those that have already been awarded grants, if for some reason they were able to use what they've said and potentially have room to use more in the last month or so, would they be able to request some of that funding since it had already been assigned to us at one point? Or is it just going to sit there as deobligated?
That's a good question. We're struggling with that, the answer to that. We have been asked that question by others. The problem is that in the award documents, April 30th was the last day to move money around. And
Right.
so if the last month really isn't going to work so well. But I'm sure if somebody came with an emergency request, we would do everything we could to accommodate them. So, I mean, that's not probably the answer you're looking for, but we do have that April 30th deadline that we have to consider.
True. I was just looking at the numbers, so it rose to the occasion again. So does anybody else
Absolutely.
have questions for Marie?
I just share real quickly. Marie, can you tell us how many of the grantees actually spent all their money or are on track to? It kind of goes with that question of who might even ask because they've already spent their allotment.
That's a very good point. We, both of the mental health courts will be spending down all of their money. And the Foundation for an Independent Tomorrow, which got over $1 million, they are going to be spending all of their money as well. But we did have most other grants at least move money around within the program or deobligate.
Thank you.
For the record, Ms. Ingram is here for roll.
Thank you for that. We're still not at quorum though, right, Georgia? Are we at 8?
Yeah, we're not at quorums.
Okay. Any other questions for Marie before we move on from this agenda item? Hearing none, I will now close this agenda item. I will now open agenda item 5, the Nevada Local Adjustment Reinvestment Coordinating Council statute review. As the grant money in the previous agenda item was a one-shot appropriation from the general fund, the money will not continue into the next biennium. The goal of the money was to facilitate county-level reentry and recidivism services. Recidivism is generally thought of in a 3-year time period. The grantees from the NLJR grant have been asked to continue providing follow-up information and make data available to the council. This will help determine program successes and it will help when requesting future appropriations and seeking additional grant funds. The NDSP will remain diligent in looking for funding opportunities at the federal level when they again become available. In the meantime, the Nevada Local Adjustment Reinvestment Council is guided by Nevada Revised Statute 176.014. Director Powers will review the statute with us and then we can discuss ways the council can fulfill its duties in the interim. I will now turn it over to Georgia.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted just quickly to go over the statute as Chair Bird talked about. Prior to AB 388 passing, there was the period between the inception of the council in 2019 and 2023 when this money came in and was made available. And one of the biggest things that the council was supposed to work at is giving out grant monies, and there was no money. So there was talk of shuttering the council prior to 388 passing in 2023. So I want to make sure that if we do not have state money, we're not going to have state money in the next biennium. And depending on what happens at the federal level, if we have grants available to us, that we look at our statute and what else the council might be able to do. So I'm going to share my screen and we will read through it. Sorry. Okay. So everyone can see the statute at this point?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is the statute underneath the commission, Nevada Sentencing Commission statute. The Local Justice Reinvestment Coordinating Council is guided by NRS 176014. And number 1 states that the Nevada Local Justice Reinvestment Coordinating Council is hereby created, and the council consists of 1 member from each county in this state whose population is less than 100,000, and 2 members from each county in this state whose population is 100,000 or more. Each member of the council must be appointed by the governing body of the applicable county and must meet any qualifications adopted by the Sentencing Commission pursuant to subsection 8. The chair of the Sentencing Commission shall appoint the chair of the council from among the members of the council. The council shall advise the Sentencing Commission on matters related to any legislation, regulations, rules, budgetary changes, and all other actions needed to implement the provisions of Chapter 633, Statutes of Nevada, 2019, as they relate to local governments. Identify county-level programming and treatment needs for persons involved in the criminal justice system for the purpose of reducing recidivism. Make recommendations to the Sentencing Commission regarding grants to local governments, courts, and nonprofit organizations from the State General Fund. Oversee the implementation of local grants. Create performance measures to assess the effectiveness of the grants and identify opportunities for collaboration with the Department of Health and Human Services at the state and county level for treatment services and funding. And then housekeeping, each member of the council serves a term of 2 years. Members may be reappointed for additional terms of 2 years in the same manner as the original appointments. Vacancies occurring in the membership of the council must be filled in the same manner as the original appointment, not later than 30 days after the vacancy occurs. While engaged in the business of the council, to the extent of legislative appropriation, each member of the council is entitled to receive the per diem allowance and travel expenses provided for state officers and employees generally. The council may accept any gift, donation, bequest, grant, or other sources of money for the purpose of carrying out its duties pursuant to this section. To the extent of legislative appropriation, the Sentencing Commission shall provide the council with such staff as is necessary to carry out the duties of the council pursuant to this section. And finally, the Sentencing Commission may adopt any qualifications that a person must meet before being appointed as a member of the council. What we're going to talk about today is in our next item is the Health and Human Services collaborations. Without grant funds to distribute, that is probably one of the biggest ways that the council can work at the county level with the help of the commission. So I will stop sharing at this point and turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Are there any ideas or discussion points anyone would like to share at this point in the discussion in regards to the requirements under this statute? Hearing none, I will close this agenda item. I will now open agenda item number 6, County Health and Human Services presentation. One of the duties of the council is to identify opportunities for collaboration with the Department of Health and Human Services at the state and county level for treatment services and funding. While we may have to wait for further funding opportunities, searching for collaboration possibilities with agencies of the Health and Human Services may help eliminate duplication of services and build pathways between existing entities and the reentry community. We will be hearing from the Health and Human Services from our counties over the next few meetings. Today we will begin with Humboldt and I will proceed. So, bear with me for one moment while I shift gears. As you know, I'm Denny Bird. I'm the chair of this committee. I'm also the Humboldt County Human Service Director here up in Winnemucca. My work before I moved to Nevada was in Montana for almost 19 years in mental health work with children and families. So when I came to Nevada, I was like, okay, what am I going to do in rural Nevada? And it just so happened that I started working in the district court, who at that time, this would have been 2018, at that time saw the shift happening, that pretrial supervision was becoming a huge shift across the nation, essentially. And so our district court judge wanted to start a pretrial services program. And through many, I guess, meant to be moments, it landed that I ended up taking over that grant and developing the pretrial supervision program here. Well, in the process of doing that is when this council came up and they had to appoint someone from the county. And I was approached by one of the deputy DAs that said, we feel like you fit this role. You fit the mission of what they're trying to fulfill here. And so, okay, fine. I'm up to new challenges. And so I was appointed by the commission to step into the role. And little did I know at that time how much it really did tie into what I was already trying to create and build at that time for our community. Though Winnemucca is a very small community, when I came here, I was very, very surprised at the amount of services that were here for being rural. But what I learned was a lot of the services didn't even know the others existed, even though the town is small. And there was a lot of efforts to try to coordinate and work together, but it just seemed like there was always little pieces slipping through the cracks. So I stepped in, was appointed vice chair. Still to this day, not quite sure why I was picked out of the crowd, but it worked. And with Garrett as the lead at that time, just did a lot of planning and discussion of where was this going to go if we got grant money. And so when the 3 million was appropriated, I decided that my department was going to apply for some of it because I could see where it would fit into what I was doing. So in 2022, I had already established the pretrial program, and our actual human service department at that time was only serving the indigent population. The manager at the time was leaving, and the county was deciding whether they were going to create its own human service department instead of just a program as kind of a sub-arm of the county. And they decided that they were going to create just an independent department, the human services, and it would take with it my pretrial program that I had, and it would still serve indigent with the plan of adding public guardian and public administrator within it. So it's kind of been a developing department. And when this funding came out from the council, I asked for some money to help with reentry. And I thought that it would be a good kind of full circle programming for people that I worked with on the pretrial side for when they came back to the community to help them get on their feet. Because I see repeatedly every day people being incarcerated and walking out of that jail with nothing. Like after having to help multiple people start out from scratch with no food, no shelter, which I knew that if they didn't have those two things, expecting anything more of them was not going to happen because they just go right back to their friend's couch that they can squat on or whatever, and then they can't get on their feet. And so watching that cycle happen, I chose to apply for some grant funds to help with those that were coming back into the community from a long period of incarceration. So I was kind of disappointed because I have not had the numbers referred to our department during this time that I had hoped I would. So I'm one of the categories that had to deobligate, but I am okay with the success that I did have with the few that we have served. And one of them, I just kind of have to share the full cycle story of him because I had him on pretrial supervision. When he first was arrested, he was given to us for supervision. He was motivated and wanted to do okay, but he also knew he had to serve a prison sentence. Like there wasn't going to be an option for him at the end of it. And so there were days he went through and said, why am I doing this? Why do I care if I have my ID? Why do I care if I do these things? And I kept telling him, because when you get out, it's going to be easier for you to get started if you have some of this done now. Well, lo and behold, the day I heard he was back in the community, I looked at his parole officer and said, send him my way. I can still help him. Please send him my way. And he did. He came in and I looked at him and I said, let's talk. And we have made a plan for him to get on his feet. So he had some housing. And really, the part that started this whole thing for him was he had outstanding warrants out of another state for 20 years. So when he knew he screwed up and those warrants were going to catch up with him, it spiraled from there. And that's why he ended up ultimately having to go to prison, because he couldn't get out of what had played out. But having those warrants dealt with for him lifted a huge burden. So when he came back to the community, he's like, you were right. This is a little easier because I had done some of this already. So we got him reestablished. We didn't have to go through the birth certificate and ID part of things. We could just start working on other things. He's applying for disability because he's on full-time oxygen, so it makes sense. But he also, as of recent, and this will come out in my next report, was able to find a manager job at a motel where it's something he can still do being on oxygen and support himself. while he's trying to see if the disability will come through, but he still has a purpose. And part of his purpose is to try to help clean up the motel population in our town and make sure that those motels are safe places for people to stay. So even though I've had a few, he's probably been my biggest success story in utilizing these funds, because it did go full circle for him. There's a lot of challenges in rural Nevada, as you know. Like I said, there was a lot more services here in Winnemucca than I thought when I moved here. But there's some big barriers for people. One being transportation. It's extremely hard. We have no public transportation here. And getting people to Social Security offices to get a Social Security card, or just trying to get those services is difficult because they can't even get there. We have the train, and now we have a little bit of the bus coming through. But transportation is extremely difficult. We do have mental health and substance use providers here, but not enough. And I'm thankful for virtual treatment, but nothing can replace face-to-face. And so we do utilize a lot of Zoom and that kind of treatment, but we don't have enough mental health. And we also don't have enough inpatient facilities that are easy to get to. Trying to send somebody that's struggling with a mental health need or substance use or both 2 hours away just to get treatment can be a huge barrier just to get them there. So those three things are part of the huge barriers here. I was very thankful with the reentry funds that I was able to fund some of the things to help people still get some of those things that they needed, like their Social Security card. I was able to give fuel to get someone there so they could get it. And so I think that being able for all of us to be able to communicate what our barriers are in our communities to help problem solve for each other. I think the council staff are amazing. They are some of the most responsive, quickest responding people I've ever worked with. And I think that as we go forward, even though the money may not be there, I think there's a lot of discussions around the regulations and the legislations and budgetary items that they keep us involved in and aware of, so that we can try to problem solve how to continue with the services that we're needing in our communities. And so I think that the staff helping us facilitate this council to still have those discussions will be a big part of going forward, even though the money aspect will not be there until we can find more. So with that, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to field any questions. Okay, hearing none, I will close that agenda item. I will now open agenda item 7. The dates for our meetings for the rest of the year are provided in our agenda. Our next meeting will be July 9th, 2025, and we'll meet at 1:30 again, and then October 15th, 2025 at 1:30 as well. Our staff is already working on more topics and items for discussion for future meetings, but does anybody have anything to be considered for future meetings? Please feel free to share. Hearing none, if you think of anything that you would like to be considered for an agenda item for a future meeting, please contact myself or Director Powers, and we'll be happy to consider that. With that, I will now open the second period of public comment. Just as we did during the first period of public comment, those who wish to testify may do so by telephone. Due to time constraints, public comment will be limited to 2 minutes. Any members of the public that exceed the 2-minute may submit their testimony in writing to the Department of Sentencing Policy at sentencingpolicy@ndsp.nv.gov. Again, please mute the device on which you are watching the meeting. All sound will come through your telephone. At this time, I'll ask staff to direct those who wish to testify. Miss Jenna, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Chair, we have no one who would wish to testify at this time.
Thank you. That concludes our second period of public comment. All right, well, great work, everyone. Thank you for the members of the council that were here and that presented. We've accomplished a lot, and I look forward to seeing you on July 9th at 1:30. This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.